Let's talk a little bit about Midnight Cowboy, shall we? Released by Criterion in this beautiful package with tons of special features as always. The winner of the 1969 Academy Award and maybe one of the first films that was actually rated X and not R, and definitely, if I'm not mistaken, the first film to win the Best Picture being rated X. This stars Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman, obviously much younger versions of those two, and both are phenomenal in these roles. Jon Voight is almost unrecognizable, just his persona and the way he, you know, portrays himself and portrays his character in the film, and then Dustin Hoffman as well, especially with the accent he portrays. Not that I've seen like every role in Dustin Hoffman with Dustin Hoffman in it, but I do know he's an actor that really throws himself into every character as well. And in this one, he plays that like that short, funny Italian guy really well. And he obviously plays a sick character in this film, so he portrays the illness that he has and the sickness that he has really well as well. Product of its time, for sure. This probably isn't a film that would be able to be released today with the rating that it has and with the content that it has. There's no way. You can release a film probably based on the same book, because this is an adaptation of a book, and you can probably throw the same themes into it, but the stuff that they get away with in this film you probably couldn't do today. Regardless, it's a phenomenal film, and I mean, it's a treat to watch. Like it's a really unique film with the subject matter that it deals with, as well as just the filmmaking style. John Schlesinger is the director. Schlesinger. I used to pronounce it Schlesinger, but it's Schlesinger. And he also directed a film called Sunday Bloody Sunday, which also deals with similar themes as well. And he is from Britain, and he's an Academy Award winner. So a lot of the people actually went on to do really great things, as well as the cinematographer and the producer for this film. But anyways, before this goes too long with that introduction, let's get into a little bit of the plot. We have Jon Voight starting out. We're introduced to him right away. The main theme song of this film is Everybody's Talking Now. I should have looked up the artist, but the song plays like 3 or 4 times throughout the film. Great track. And it opens up the film with that while the credits are rolling. And we're following Jon Voight's character as he's boarding a bus to New York City. And he carries around this like portable radio, and it's actually really funny because he almost has a relationship with the radio itself, as if it's a character. He's so like, it's always with him, and he's always playing it like somebody would play a boombox, or like, you know, obviously there's no there was headphones, but he never uses them. He just blasts the radio wherever he is, and he's like showing people, like there's a scene where he's on the bus sitting beside a nun. He's like, "That's New York talking, ma'am," and he's just such a character, so full of life, and like such like a small town guy who's just friendly with everybody and just has so much energy all the time, and so much like he just wants to make friends with everybody. He's the kind of guy that would annoy a lot of people, but also the kind of guy that, myself included, would probably just want to be friends with, because he's just so full of energy all the time. And yeah, he's on this bus heading to New York, and basically he considers himself a hustler, and he basically pimps himself out. Literally, he's just going, trying to find women on the streets, making friends with them. He asks this one woman where the Statue of Liberty is, and she gets the impression that he is trying to hit on her, and then he keeps following her. He's like, "No, I'm just trying to find the Statue of Liberty," and she's like, "Were you serious?" And he's like, "Yes, ma'am." And she's like, "I think you just go like down this street," and she's like, "You're a really beautiful woman, ma'am." And she's like, "You're not looking for the Statue of Liberty at all, are you?" "No, ma'am." And it's I don't know. I loved his persona through the entire thing. It was awesome. There is a sequence in New York as well that not copies, but is influenced by the Beatles walk on that one album that they released, where they're walking down the sidewalk. Where I think it was I think it was John Legend that was barefoot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was John Legend that was barefoot on that album cover. But they imitate that walk, and it was pretty cool. It was definitely something recognizable that I liked a lot. I really appreciated that. There's a lot of flashbacks to John Voight's character. His name is Joe Buck, and there's a lot of flashbacks to Joe Buck's childhood and what led him to become the man that he is. And I on the special features, which I will be talking a little bit more in detail as I get through the video after the initial film review. The cinematographer mentions a lot of his choices in like high contrast, low contrast, and there's even some black and white scenes that kind of tell the story in itself in the way the cinematography is done and the way the color palettes are done. And the flashback specifically is where the cinematographer chose to, you know, do a lot more higher contrast in color and brighter contrast basically to show kind of like a dreamy memory kind of sequence when it came to introducing Joe as like Joe's history, you could say. So he's walking through New York City. He stands out like you could say a sore thumb because he's really tall. Like I think he's like 6 foot something, and he has a cowboy hat and he has like a cowboy jacket. He totally stands out in New York City, even in the crowds of people. There's like 100 people on screen and you could just totally pinpoint him. And he's walking down the street. He comes across this guy that's just laying on the sidewalk. And I guess some people do that as like, you know, proving like artistic points or stuff like that. Like people are so busy that they don't even notice a man just lying on the street. But this guy's just lying there and nobody's paying attention to him. And Joe Buck just comes around and like stares at him and he's like looking around, noticing that people aren't noticing this guy in the middle of the street. He's like, what the fuck is going on? It's like he's in a totally different world. He meets this woman and she ends up allowing him to go back to her place, and it makes for one of the funniest and strangest and kind of fucked up Jesus, I can't talk. Sequences in this film and scenes in this film. She's having a conversation which we are left to assume her husband on the phone while she's taking off the guy's shirt, and she's totally ready to bang him basically. And then they go to the bedroom, and while they're having sex, there's sequences of what's going on TV, and it'll like cut through channels on the TV playing in the hotel or wherever they are, and then it'll show them having sex, and then back to the TV, and it'll just show random clips of random shows and commercials and stuff like that. I found that funny. But after they're done, she's getting dressed, and they basically start having a conversation where he is expecting her to pay him, but she is expecting him to pay her. And it's just the way he's just so nonchalant about it. He's just so confused because he was just waiting for her money. And then she starts to cry and she's like, what do you think, I'm some kind of whore? And she just like starts to like freak out and, you know, call him whatever. And then she's like crying. She feels like used and whatnot. And then he starts to feel bad and he gives her money. He's like, oh, you know, he's like being all like the sweetheart, nice guy. And John Voight, it's funny because he really has a baby face. I think he was probably 30 or 31, something like that. And he has a baby face for as tall and like manly as he is. He still has that like baby face kind of thing. His face looks like he's like a 22-year-old kid pretty much. But he also plays that like woman-loving, sweet, like nice guy kind of thing, along with the work that he's doing for himself as a hustler, which he claims himself to be, and just basically looking to make a buck wherever he can. Joe Buck wants to make a buck, however he can, pretty much. He meets what's his name? Enrico Salvatore Rizzo, played by Dustin Hoffman, and his nickname is Ratso, and they meet at a bar, and they meet at what I presume is a gay bar, because there's a lot of transsexual people and gay people, or gay men, that are hanging out at this bar. This is a 1969 movie, so a lot of it is taboo, and it's not rated X just for that. It's rated X because of certain sequences that happen in this film. One being in a movie theater that involves Jon Voight and another man, and what else? There's flashbacks of like really really brutal R scenes involving men and women and men and men. Because Jon Voight, it ends up being revealed that him and his either girlfriend or fiance or whoever they were in a car back however many years before, and they were invaded basically by this gang of like vicious hicks, pretty much, and forced out of the car and then stripped and taken advantage of. And it's really fucked up when they do those flashbacks again. The cinematographer and the person who designed the score made it really horrific. Like, it kind of has a Last House on the Left vibe when it comes to the flashbacks. The flashbacks are very quick. They're not. They don't focus on it for a long time, but the 1 to 2 seconds that it'll show what's happening, it puts so much into your imagination with the visuals and the color palettes and the music that it just really, really gets under your skin, and it's really, really disturbing to see. So Rizzo and Joe Buck end up forming a very close relationship, but not before Rizzo decides to set Joe Buck up with this middleman, he calls him, or basically a pimp that will help get Joe Buck clients. And he gives him the address and calls him up and sends Joe Buck over his way. Of course, he asks for a little tip for himself, so Joe Buck ends up paying Rizzo $20 or something like that to meet this dude. And this dude is like, like, he seems like the guy that would definitely be performing R on people. He's like this short, stubby, bald guy, looks like maybe 50s or maybe 60s even. He's just got this greaseball face and this like really, really, really like creepy smile, like pervert smile. It's really, really fucking weird. And he's like checking Joe Buck up and down, like seeing like his body size, and then he starts to ask like Joe like what his intentions are with girls, like what brings him to the industry, and then he starts like accusing him of being lonely. And then he starts going all like preacher mode. He's like, loneliness leads men to fornication. Loneliness leads to whatever. Loneliness leads to drugs. Loneliness leads to blasphemy and stuff like that. And then he opens the washroom door. And on the washroom door, there's this like statue of Jesus. It's like built into it. And then he turns a switch and it lights up and it starts to like glow. And like there's strobe lights and shit like that, and then he gets on his knees and starts like praying for Joe Buck and like grabbing his hands and stuff like that. And sorry, my keys are bugging me. And just Joe Buck basically gets the hell out of there, and he's all pissed off. And then he starts having flashbacks because all this imagery just triggered him pretty much, and he has these flashbacks again of the really horrible situation that happened to him and his girlfriend. And he just starts to think of his mother and when he was a child and all the anger issues he's had as a child, because he really grew up with a lot of anger involving I think his grandmother. Even though him and his grandmother were really close and his grandmother was a really sweet woman, he had these rage fits when he was a kid, and they led to his adult life, and then they only got worse after that situation with the girl. But he basically is out to get Rizzo at this point. And a few days later, he does run into Rizzo at a diner, and it's weird because he smiles at him at first, and then his face just changes. It's like, and then he starts to like go interrogate Rizzo, and he's like, Rizzo's like, don't hit me. He's like, hit you, I'm gonna strangle you to death. But after that, they end up getting really close. We learn that Rizzo, he considers himself a cripple, but he has a funny leg. He walks with a limp, like a really big limp, and he's also really sick. The thing with this movie, it's for the most part very subtle. Like, they don't spoon feed you with what's going on all the time. You're left to kind of look at the obvious, and maybe this film you can take in different ways. To me, it's pretty clear what's going on. And this film obviously deals, in my opinion, with a lot of the AIDS epidemic, even though this is not the 80s, this is way before. And a lot of homosexuality and a lot of homosexual themes, but in a time where it wasn't all over the place, kind of thing. And I'm just assuming that Rizzo has AIDS. Like but he doesn't. He's not openly gay because this film does use the FAG word a lot, and Rizzo especially uses it a lot, and he's always calling the gay guys at the bar that word all the time, and he's very always talking about chicks and stuff like that. Even there's this one sequence where Joe Buck and Rizzo start to like get all macho and talk about, how many times have you been with a woman, and like, I bet you never been laid in your life and stuff like that. And it's never like blatantly said what Rizzo's sexuality is, even what Joe Buck's sexuality is, because there is sequences where he does get with men for money, but it's never confirmed. Nothing is ever confirmed, even with, like, you don't really ever know what Rizzo has. You're just left to guess, and my guess would be that. And even just, like, subtle behaviors kind of show that Rizzo probably has, secrets that he doesn't want to tell people, kind of thing. And there's this really intense sequence for 1969 especially that is one of the biggest reasons that this film got the X rating after seeing the special features, and it's where Joe Buck gets watches a film with a guy who offers him money, and then they start getting intimate, and afterwards this guy who was played by Bob Balaban, who's a pretty big actor. He was in the movie Lady in the Water. He plays like the snobby film critic, and he's popped up in a lot. Like, he's one of those recognizable faces that I recognized right away before I found out his name. But he plays the guy that hooks up with John Voight's character, Joe Buck, and then afterwards he says he has no money and he was just lying about it, which is a really stupid thing to do. And Joe Buck's ready to kick his ass. He doesn't, but he got pretty close. Like, that's a pretty messed up thing to do to anybody, but that happens. And it's kind of a character study, but it's more of like a buddy film between these two lost characters, one suffering from an illness and the other one in a completely, totally different environment than what he's used to, being Joe Buck. And yeah, it's great. Like, there's a sequence where Rizzo is shining shoes because his father did that, and he kind of took over. So he's a really he doesn't want to do it as a profession, but you can tell that he's very good at it, and he's done it a lot. There's a scene closer to the end of the film that takes place in this club, and the filmmaking style during that scene in that club really changes. It becomes real surreal filmmaking with the cinematography, but just the way everything is shot, it definitely feels like you're watching a different film almost. When you're watching, you get to like the third of a film and it just feels like you're watching a completely different movie. That's how this whole club sequence felt, and just was how do I put it? Just the change in it, like the decisions were different, and I don't know exactly what the cinematographer wanted to do with those changes, but they were definitely noticeable, and in a good way, because I'm not saying it got worse. I'm just saying it was a big change, and really fit the club atmosphere and what the party sequence was going for, and kind of this is where Rizzo also starts to get really sick. There's a point where he falls down the stairs. He can't even walk anymore. When they're back in the apartment, he's terrified. He's basically broken into a fever, and he starts to get really scared because he's like, what they do to people when they figure out they can't walk anymore. I guess he's referring to like being in a wheelchair or something. But yeah, and then he doesn't want anything to do with doctors either, which I personally never understand, because the only thing that I would want is a doctor if I'm in that state. But some people they're scared to get the news. They're scared they're too scared of the unknown. They don't want to they don't want to know, I guess, and Rizzo definitely fits into that category where he doesn't want to know. He knows he's close to the end, but all he wants to do is get to Florida, and at this point, Joe Buck is such best friends with this guy, and they like they never form a gay relationship, but there's that caring, you know. There's that border romance that doesn't get to romance. Like it stays buddy, it stays like best friend mode, but there's that tenderness. That's the word I was looking for. There's that tenderness that suggests it, but doesn't go there. And you know, it's really sad to see in the end the death of Rizzo on the bus, and how again there's that tenderness with Joe Rizzo and him, and just the way he's never leaving his side kind of thing. And at the end of the movie he like gives up the whole cowboy thing. I don't know about that, like I don't know why he did. He didn't, I guess he just felt like he wasn't that cowboy persona anymore, so he's just like, fuck this, I just want to be an average Joe again. And because he really like sold the cowboy thing right throughout the film. I loved it, just his persona and his friendliness, like I was saying. But the end he just said fuck it. And even like in the middle of the film when he had to sell his radio, you could feel the pain in that too, because he wanted to care for Rizzo, and at that point money was more important to him, and he sold it for like $5. But it was so sad to see him part with that radio, because like I said, that radio, the way he would listen to it and play it everywhere he goes, was like a character in its own. Like that radio was like a character in its own. It was really funny the way the director did that. And it was, you know, just taking an inanimate object and making it like a character itself. It's great. Now, John Schlesinger passed away in 2002. He was a homosexual man, and he had a lifetime partner who was the director of photography in this film. So they put together this project in the late 60s or mid 60s, whenever they started, because somebody brought the director the book, Midnight Cowboy, and he thought he could make a perfect picture with it. And because it dealt with the gay themes, he could bring, you know, a lot to it, and it was a passion project for him. And he's also an old school homosexual man on the special features, because he has no problem, you know, dropping the F-bomb, not the fuck bomb, but the other F-bomb, all the time. And he like he's used to the whole homophobia because he was an older man. Like I think he died at 80, maybe, am I mistaken? But he had a last interview, I think, in 2001, which is on the special features, and he has this very like soft, kind of ASMR voice, like very soft spoken, very friendly, sweet man kind of thing. And you could tell he was like getting older at that point, because it was maybe even less than a year before his death. But he's just a very smart guy. Like, there's things that he said that that made me laugh with his parents and stuff like that. He said, you know, I think his mom or his dad was like, I think it was his mom. She's like, I'm so glad your film is doing so well, but please don't let it play anywhere around here. What will the neighbors think? Because it's so taboo, not just because it deals with gay themes, but how far it goes with them. And then the father says something, like his dad says something along the lines of, does the main character have to be gay and Jewish? Oh my god, it's funny. It's funny because of like the old school thinking, old time thinking, and when just the shit people say when they're, you know, were raised in like the 60s and 70s. It can be funny. It can be funny. So the director of photography, his name is Michael Childers, and he was the long-term partner of the director, John Schlesinger. Cinematographer Adam Hollander was a Polish guy, and he was really young when this was one of his first projects. He also went to do a lot of bigger, better things. But he was from Poland, and he was in his 20s when he started the cinematography for this film. And you can tell he had a lot of passion for the project, and he admits to like learning a lot, especially even just American filmmaking, but filmmaking in general, being from another country, and all that good stuff. There's a documentary. There's a few documentaries, a couple of them. One with the not the cinematographer. Waldo Salt, the producer. There's a big documentary. It's an hour long. It actually was nominated, I think, for best documentary feature for an Academy Award. I think the documentary mentioned that. But there's a lot of crazy things that's mentioned in that documentary too. Apparently, Waldo's mother would at Christmas time. This is really fucked up. But at Christmas time, she would like give all the presents and then like threaten to go kill herself. And then him and his sisters or brothers or whatever like would have to like go around the house seeing like where she is or like hide the pills or weapons or stuff like that. And it was a really fricked up story, man. Fricked up, really fucked up story, like beyond belief. Um, he mentions this quote too in the documentary. He's like, everybody has their basic needs. Like every human has their basic needs, almost like necessities and human nature things. And he sees in storytelling, in books, in films, in TV, and television, whatever, that that's basically where all drama is created. It's the natural human basic instincts that every single human being needs from childhood to adulthood that creates and anything, or should I say like getting them accomplished and fulfilled by any means necessary. And that's basically what creates drama and what creates drama in anything in life and in storytelling. And I couldn't agree more. That's like the best aspect of cinema is just that in a nutshell. Um, so I covered the movie already. I'm pretty much just going through special features. There's two fantastic tributes, one from John Voight and one from Dustin Hoffman to John Schlesinger after his passing, and they're talking about like how they got the roles and what they learned from John Schlesinger, and just really really funny stuff, especially with Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman's hilarious on stage when he's giving the tribute to this was the BAFTA tributes or BAFTA awards or something like that, and he. John Schlesinger, he's a very straight acting man, so apparently when Dustin Hoffman was like prior to getting the role, or maybe he had already gotten it already, he was talking about like how he had no idea that John Schlesinger was gay, and they started talking about marriage, and he asked Dustin Hoffman asked John Schlesinger like why he wasn't married, if he ever plans on getting married, and John Schlesinger is just like, I never really pictured just lying beside a woman before. And then Dustin Hoffman is like, oh. And just the way he delivered it, I really, really laughed at that. And John Voight's pretty funny in that tribute as well. There's an interview with him in 1970, which would be a year after this film was released, and he talks about how he's always been good at portraying accents, and he had to portray a Texas accent for this one because that's where he was from in the film, his character, going up to New York. And he just starts to drop like different kinds of accents and like which ones are more difficult than the others, and it's he's really funny in the interview too, so I enjoyed that interview as well. The commentary, I will say, that's the only thing in the special features that is a little dry. I listened to half of it, but I wanted to watch the film in its entirety and really grasp its themes more, so I kind of put the commentary to the side. I did get through the commentary once, but I didn't take too many notes on the commentary. I just wanted to get as much as I could on the film itself. Because it's John Schlesinger and the producer of the film. The producer, I wrote his name down, I believe it's Jerome Hellman. I really, really like this film. I finished off right now with a 4.5 out of 5 stars on this one. I loved everything about it. I loved the character studies and how... I think my favorite thing about this movie is how in-depth they got with diving into the character's persona and personality and really, really, really developing these characters while leaving both of them so subtle and leaving the themes so subtle, where it's not thrown in your face, it's not spoon-fed to you, not everything is told to you like this is what's going on, this is why, but giving you so much with so little, giving you so much detail with such little detail, if that makes any sense. I know that's an oxymoron, but it really, really is how it plays out. Just checking the time on this video. I love it. I love it. And you know what? Another thing that I should have done before this review, because I love these, is the book that it came with. It does come with a, it does come with a essay by Mark Harris. It's called On the Fringe. And one of the best things about Criterion Collection is these essays that these films come with, where you just get even more detail on the filmmaking itself. So this is a great release from Criterion. I don't think it's out of print, so if you can find this on Blu-ray, it's fantastic. Best Picture winner, like you know, it deserves it, and it's not just a Best Picture winner; it's a controversial Best Picture winner. It's a rated X film, or at least when it came out, it was. I think it's just R now, but yeah, it's R rating. It's so good. It's so freaking good. I really hope I'm not missing any points on the film. There is a sequence with Dustin Hoffman's character Rizzo where they play off the whole Apocalypse Now, just the face, where everything else around it is black. So it's like he's in a shadow and all you see is his face, like they did with Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. I really, really like that, and I'm well, Apocalypse Now was after this, so Apocalypse Now probably got that inspiration from this film. So other way around. But it reminded me of Apocalypse Now. That's why I wrote that little tidbit down. I like all the dream sequences. I like when Rizzo is having daydreams about him and Joe Buck being on a resort where they're like massaging women and like they're like the pimps of the place, and you know, everything is sunshine and palm trees, and they're just like living the dream life, and everybody's like, all the girls on the balconies are calling their names, Rizzo, Rizzo, and it's really funny. Like I said, his death is extremely sad, and their bond is just so unique, because any other slightly more amateurish film would just give you too much. And this film gives you so much with, you know, less is more kind of thing. And that's what makes this film so perfect. So 4.5 out of 5 for me. This is a huge recommendation. Go watch it anywhere you can. And if you like it, go pick up the Blu-ray on Criterion if you haven't already. Yeah. Midnight Cowboy from 1969, Best Picture winner, Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman. Both like one of their first roles. It's not their first movies, but it's definitely like the beginning of their career. So it's definitely a great place to start with both of them if you want to binge a lot of their films. So that's what I got on Midnight Cowboy, and can't keep this going too long, can I? Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you'd like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more when I can, so stay tuned if you like. Check out my other content if you're interested. And until next review, have a good one, take care, and cheers.